Back in November of 2025, I got my hands on a Radxa X4. Though I didn't get all the parts that I needed at the time, so this video was delayed quite a bit. It's been nearly 3 months now. But that was alright because I had a few other projects to work on for upcoming uni studies and a couple of clients. Now that I have what I need, let's check out what the Radxa X4 is really like for a Windows build. First, let's talk about the model I got. I got the model with an Intel N100 quad-core processor, 12GB of allegedly LPDDR5 RAM, 128 gigs of eMMC. Wow. Supposedly Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth. All Radxa X4 models come with an RP2040 microcontroller and Raspberry Pi compatible GPIO pins. It also has an M.2 slot for a 2230 sized SSD, which is cool because I found 228 gigs Samsung NVMe drives in that size for about $30 each, so I got 2 of them. Though I'm pretty sure the bus interface on the Radxa X4 is PCIe 3.0, so it's going to be capped a fair amount. The device also does not by default come with a power supply or heat sinks. You will need to get both of those separately. The power supply should be USB-C PD capable of 12 volts at 2.5 amps, ideally 3. But for safety's sake, just get the Radxa recommended power supply for it. I have a link to it in the description. I also recommend getting the Radxa X4 heatsink chassis, but you'll need to do some extra modifications to it for thermal properties, and I'll explain why later. With my M.2 drives, I needed to get a M.2 to USB drive or some sort of external adapter to provision the drives and initialize them before I can use them on the Radxa X4, otherwise it would cause some unnecessary installation pains. And so I opted for the M.2 to USB external interface. It's actually pretty good. I didn't expect it to be as sturdy or reliable as it is. I used one of the drives as my Windows 11 installation media device, and the other one as my storage drive. Don't do that, as I'll explain later. While we wait for Windows to install, let's talk drivers. The driver download is pretty simple. You can easily find the drivers for it on Radxa's website. I've put the links in the description for ease of access. This is unlike the Rock 4C+, which has so many different locations for the most up-to-date downloads. But there's a caveat. You'll need to know how to do an offline install of Windows 11 once it's ready for the setup stage. It's pretty simple to find this info if you don't know how to do that yet. Brave's AI search will tell you quite fast how to do it, or you can jump into some forums. And to save you some time, it's not going to be the OOBE-NRO method. So if you see that, it's not going to work unless you have some really old Windows 11 installation media. Since you need to do an offline install, you'll need to also have another device available to download the drivers onto a USB, so that you can copy them to the Radxa X4. I'd suggest following the installation guide on the Radxa X4 docs for the drivers. For myself, a couple of the drivers failed to install, the audio driver and the one for controlling the RP2040 through Zadig. But those for now don't really matter to me as I have audio through the GPU, and I'm not using the microcontroller. I also apparently have Wi-Fi 6 on my board, not Wi-Fi 5, as the driver wasn't happy. And in CPU-Z, either it's confused or I am, but it looks to report both DDR5 and LPDDR4 for memory. At least it still reports 12GB of it. As you see, the device by default also runs at a really high CPU usage, about 90 to 100%. Constantly throttling at about 2.2 to 2.3 GHz. So let's see if we can get that running a bit better. We need to first turn off unnecessary startup items such as OneDrive and any microslop services like Teams. Next, we need to go through using Win11 debloat. It's a PowerShell script created by someone called Rapfire. Be prepared on how to use this. Read the installation docs on GitHub. It's very simple. Once that's all done, I'd recommend a restart of the system, but if you just open up Task Manager now, you'll see something amazing. The CPU usage is way down now. That 90 to 100% usage now hovers around 25% with spikes of about 60, which is a much better operation use case. It's going to be running cooler and feel way more responsive. The memory use still sits about 5 gigabytes out of 12, but that's alright. I still have a fair amount available for my needs. Editor Hank here. For an even better improvement, combine this with Spybot Anti-Beacon. Just the free version will do. You'll see that it can go even lower, to about 3%, and actually go idle. Now, you might ask, Hank, why Windows, bro? It's so bad for this type of device. My answer is a bit too edged. I would recommend using Linux on this device, but I specifically needed x86 Windows for a project I've got coming up, and it involves this single board PC. However, I do need to solve the heat issue before I work on that. It's far too hot still, especially to touch, in my opinion. Even with the copper shim mod that Christopher from Explaining Computers did, and which I copied for my build, I live in an environment where that during summer, which is now, negatively affects cooling solutions. It may be perfectly fine for your environment, but with ambient temps at about 40 degrees Celsius, or whatever that is in freedom units, it's going to cause problems. Editing Hank here. I ended up going to my local electronics shop and got my hands on a maglev 5V DC fan. I chopped off the connector from the original fan that came with the Radxa X4 heatsink, which is a separate purchase like I mentioned before, and soldered it onto the new fan's wires, used some double-sided tape to mount it, and put it on the Radxa X4 heatsink so that it blew air into the fins. This works wonderfully, keeping the device no hotter than 35 degrees Celsius, even under heavy load. It's great, though it is a bit noisy, but thankfully due to the maglev nature, it's quiet for it being at full speed. A PWM mod might be better in the future, but it's more than satisfactory for now. Also another note from Editing Hank, do yourself a favor, if you get one with an eMMC, get a 2230 SSD as well, and use that as your boot drive, as regardless of what operating system you use, for some reason it likes to corrupt the bootloader on the eMMC. I believe this might be a Radxa firmware issue, and I don't have the solution for you beyond what I did for myself. I've not had any issues booting Linux or Windows off of the SSD, but any OS on the eMMC breaks after 1 or 2 boots, and you get stuck in a boot loop. So, now that you know what the Radxa X4 is really like for a Windows setup, would you buy one? I would still get one, but I have a project for it, so I'm going to be biased. My final thoughts are, if you were to run Linux and build a better cooling solution, this would be a really powerful single board computer. Better than most work or school laptops that are available these days. Sure, you have to supply your own monitors, keyboard, mouse, cooling, power, and get some micro HDMI adapters to properly support displays, but at about 300 Aussie bucks for this model of device, power and cooling included, this is still a good portable option that is a good workhorse. It's probably not so great for most video games, but if all you need is a bit more processing power than those back-to-school laptops from JB Hi-Fi, which have 128 eMMC and 4 gigs of RAM at about $400, because you're a budding software developer making Android apps, a computer science student, or even a game developer working with Godot 2D. This is a good solution with a lot of potential for learning and modding. Well, that wraps up this video, homies. This device is quite interesting, and I hope you think so too. I'll catch us next time, and until then, keep making things.